we'll have the ability to share this on our website post-event as well. Without further ado, I think we can get started.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. As Jess said, thank you for spending your Wednesday evening with us. Before Jess pops up some slides about the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay and the work that we do, as a quick land acknowledgement, we want to first acknowledge the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards of the land. I heard a couple months ago somebody talking about land acknowledgements and how sometimes they kind of sound like, hey, thanks for getting a bicycle, maintaining that bicycle, enjoying that bicycle, and now that I've come and taken that bicycle, I want to tell you how much I appreciate all this stuff you did to have such a great bicycle. And so recognizing that the terrible history of how we've come to inhabit and enjoy this land is not a completed history, and we're adding to it every day. How we conduct ourselves today, tomorrow, and for generations to come is all going to be a part of the story, and it's our responsibility to walk in a better way than our ancestors. Now, that said, thinking about today, very briefly, the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, we are a volunteer-driven, not-for-profit think and do tank. And we like to harness the power of place and the people in it, like yourselves, in Southern Georgian Bay to grow social, environmental, and economic prosperity. And we do this by doing three things: connecting people, conducting research and sharing knowledge, and then nurturing collaboration based on that. Then with these three actions that we take on the next slide, we have our 4 priority areas that we do this within. There is the green economy, which is the area that I mostly focus on. We have arts and culture, we have social finance and housing, as well as business and innovation. And on the next slide, we have all of our 2024 partners and sponsors, and we're grateful for the support that we have. We have at the lead level, the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay and our own funding programs, the municipality of Meaford. Thank you to our supporting level sponsors, the town of Collingwood and town of Blue Mountains, and at the community level, Wasaga Beach. That said, we are also in the midst of our 2024 program partner campaign, and we're looking for municipal, business, philanthropic, and individual support to ensure that our programming can continue. Events like this, in-person events, which are all available on our website. So you can kind of get a sense for the work that we do if you're not familiar. We would be happy to have your support and to have you participate as well. And finally, some other ways to get a sense of what we do. You can follow our newsletter or subscribe to our newsletter. You can join the conversation by attending events just like this. You can participate in a learning group or a design team. And if you may have heard that we had our Green Economy Hub design team that was successful in getting our project off the ground. So if you'd like to join anything like that, please get in touch with and tell us what your interests are and how you think you might be able to help. And remember that your program support ensures that our programming remains free for everybody. And with that, I'd like to introduce our board chair, Rosalind Morrison, who will talk a little bit more about what we have scheduled for tonight. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much, Eric. Eric Ennis is one of our board members, and I would just like to say right up front that all of our board is a hardworking, working board, and we couldn't do it without all of you. So thank you, board members of the Institute. It's my pleasure to launch this discussion this evening by letting everyone know that the Institute's theme for 2024 is collective leadership and action. And it really focuses on ensuring the sustainability of our towns, which we all love. Tonight's title for the event is Modeling a Regional Approach to Tackle Key Challenges. And the CAOs from across the region will be highlighting challenges in their communities, What's been changing over the last few years? What are some key actions or bold moves that have taken place? Many of the municipalities are in the midst of updating official plans, strategic plans, sustainability plans, community improvement plans, and all of these, of course, want to be integrated so that they become efficient and effective in terms of guiding where we are currently and how we move into the future. So we wondered also about the beginnings of a deeper conversation about how we might all work collectively on a regional level. So we're not talking about amalgamation here at all. What we are talking about is how do we align our objectives? How do we ensure that we can pool our resources? How do we then create the understandings and the agreements in terms of embarking on a few key new pilot projects for our region? So I am grateful that all of the CAOs have carved out the time for this discussion. We're going to have a really balanced, positive, solutions-focused discussion, which we want the community to be a part of. And we want to make sure that we are looking at the big picture and not getting too much into the weeds, but really understanding by the end of this discussion how we might collectively move forward together. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Andrew McNeil, Chief Administration Officer, CAO of Wasaga Beach, John Ferguson, CAO of Clearview, Sonia Skinner, CAO of Collingwood, Sean Everett, CAO of the Blue Mountains, and Karen Govan, CAO of Grey Highlands. Thank you all for joining us. And we're going to start the discussion with Andrew McNeil, sharing with all of us what's happening in Wasaga Beach. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you so much. And you're going to be loading the presentation? Fantastic. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. Great pleasure to be here tonight. We've all been given 5 minutes, so I'm going to be skimming through some of the highlights at about 10,000 feet in the air. Happy to drill down into a lot of the details when we get to the Q&A portion. When you hear the name Wasaga Beach, I think a lot of us, it brings a smile to a lot of our faces. We have all had a lot of experience that we've enjoyed with our families in Wasaga Beach. We are in the process of reinventing ourselves. And one of the core things that we're trying to do is bring the fun back, bring family-friendly fun back to Wasaga Beach. Next slide, please. So a few of the drivers. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but these are the 5 things that I'll touch on quickly this evening. Rapid growth, infrastructure issues that we're dealing with at present, placemaking, quality of life, affordable housing, and regional collaboration. And there will be elements of this that will be in everyone's presentations. I think these are a lot of common issues. We're all unique in our communities, but the sum is truly greater than all of the individual parts, which is why we're here this evening. Next slide, please. So like a lot of our neighbors, Collingwood, Clearview, et cetera, we're growing rapidly. Wasaga Beach is one of the fastest growing communities in Canada. We have a growth rate over 20%, which has been consistent over quite a few decades now. We're about 4 times the provincial average, our growth rate. And a lot of the reason for this is we are now within the commuter shed of the GTA, an hour-and-a-half drive. And every morning, flowing out of Wasaga Beach, looks like the field of dreams, that steady stream of cars heading down to the GTA. There's good and bad that comes with that. A lot of families are getting priced out of the GTA, and they're choosing to come and live in Wasaga Beach and areas beside Wasaga Beach. So it is good that we're getting a good diversity of population coming to our community, but that brings a lot of challenges when it comes to services and infrastructure to support that rapid growth. Next slide. We all know suburban infrastructure is more expensive than urban intensification infill. Wasaga Beach for the last 30 years has really been sprawling, as a lot of the communities in our region have. That's expensive to grow and maintain on an ongoing basis. So we're looking at that. We're all starting to feel the pinch of that come budget time. A lot of our focus over the next 3 decades is going to be on the urban side of things as our greenfield developments build out. So for us, urbanization, intensification, building up instead of out is our future. That brings challenges. Again, not new to the GTA, but it is new for our community and embracing density and embracing taller buildings. The infrastructure to support that is important. A lot of our neighbors are struggling with some of the harder infrastructure requirements, water, sewer. We're in a relatively good position when it comes to the pipes and the roads. Where we struggle is the softer side of things. We are the largest community in the country without a high school. Luckily, the image on the bottom left is the recent $57 million announcement of us getting a high school. So the softer side of things, healthcare, education, et cetera, that's where we're going to be paying a lot of our attention to over the next coming decades so that we can truly become a complete community. Next slide. A lot of what you see in Wasaga Beach, you see this in all of our communities. There's been a lot of focus on auto-centric types of development, insular, single-use destinations, and we know better now. We know we can do better. And next slide. What people are telling us is that they want to see mixed-use, vibrant, walkable places. The cool factor. COVID changed the world. People are now working from home. We have a lot of folks in our community that are working in the GTA, but living in Wasaga Beach. And they're looking for cool places, not only to visit, but spend daily time, et cetera. So for us, particularly given that we're really a tourism-based economy, cool factor is important. And this is going to be our focus for the next little while. And I think really it's important that all of us pay a lot of attention into quality of place, quality of life. Those are key factors that people are looking to when they choose where to invest, not only where they choose to move to, but businesses as well. It's an important factor. Next slide. Affordable housing, I suspect every one of us will be talking about this this evening. Our community this is incredibly important. We have a lot of old cottage courts that were really never designed for year-round living, but we have quite a few critical issue. We're paying very close attention to the recommendations that are going forward to the county at the next meeting. We understand that there could be some more affordable housing coming from the county in our community, but critical issue for us, workforce housing, not only affordable, attainable, but the workforce side of things is very important, I think, to all of us, particularly given that we're a tourism economy. A lot of our workers are getting priced out of our community. We just opened a casino fairly recently, 240 jobs. A lot of the workers can't afford to live in our community, so they're having to commute long distances because they're getting priced out by the tourists and the cottagers. So providing affordable quality workforce housing is something that we're really going to be focusing on. We're looking at our inventory of land holdings to see what the town could do from a leadership perspective and to get into the business of affordable, attainable, and workforce housing in partnership with not only the county, but also third-party providers. Next slide. And one of the biggest issues, this is where we're somewhat unique, 25% of our geographic land area is actually owned by the province. The province has put out a lot of legislation over the past few years talking about building affordable housing and cutting red tape. They have significant land holding in our community that is on serviced areas where they can build housing very quickly. So we're trying to get them to the table and saying, listen, if you want to get serious about it, you own the land, come work with us. We think there's an opportunity to leverage some of your land holdings to a higher and better use here in our community. And I suspect that issue may exist in some of our neighbors as well. But a tremendous opportunity in Wasaga Beach. Obviously, some of these lands are protected environmentally, but we do have significant areas where we could leverage provincial land holdings to deliver affordable, attainable, and workforce housing in Wasaga Beach. Next slide. And this is my last slide. I think I'm bringing it in well under my 5 minutes. And this is thinking of ourselves as a collective destination. dependable destination is something I want to leave you all with. I would consider the Village of Blue to be a dependable destination. And what I mean by that is, doesn't matter if it's rainy, it's cold, it's windy, there's always something to do. And you can go there virtually any day, 365, and there's people there. With Saga Beach, we get the gale force winds coming off of Georgian Bay. So for us, becoming dependable is incredibly important. A lot of our infrastructure is gone. The stuff that was here for 100 years that made us dependable, we are now in a place where we're having to reinvent ourselves. And you're going to be seeing something similar to the Village at Blue come out of the ground on our beachfront in the next couple of years. That's to build a dependable destination. But we also need to be thinking regionally, collectively about the tourist economy. Someone that goes to the Village at Blue for a couple nights, visits Collingwood, visits Clearwater, et cetera, Clearview, and Wasaga Beach, how do we all work together and ensure there are first quality, world-class experiences here that we can all leverage to drive economic investment and really attract people to our community? So I'll leave it there, and happy to drill down into any of these points after everyone's done. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you so much. You've given us lots to think about: mixed use, vibrant spaces and places, and wondering about the planning that we have in place for that kind of concept. Cool factor like that. Collective destination, that's something for us to be thinking about as we look at all the gems, treasures that we have across our region. Affordable housing, and in particular, the inventory of land that is so related to solving the affordable housing issue. Thank you for all of that. Our next speaker is John Ferguson, CAO Clearview. Over to you, John.
Sorry, John, you're muted still.
Sorry, building upon some of the things that Andrew had spoken about with respect to Wasaga Beach, and maybe some of the differences that each community has. Clearview, we border on all three of the other communities except for Grey Highlands, but we border on Blue Mountain, Collingwood, and Wasaga Beach. And a lot of the stuff is a drive-through for us. So we try to take advantage of the people coming through our area, mainly because of the destination areas that are beyond us. But with that said, some of our issues are similar with respect to the impact of growth and getting our community ready to work together in a more inclusive manner. So, but ultimately, I've taken the opportunity to describe really 5 areas that I think are important in Clearview. And basically the municipal collaboration as it relates now to supporting and sharing the infrastructure and creating greater efficiencies. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the slides. Sourcing of water and disposing of sewer is a technical and cost challenge that all the municipalities are faced. Intermunicipal agreements, when properly developed, so if there's an opportunity for us to get to the housing initiative, in my opinion, can evolve best under an intermunicipal agreement that controls not only the cost, but also who qualifies. Service sharing, such as transit, mutual aid, landfills, and infrastructure, has been seen between municipalities, and there is a need for continued opportunities in these areas, but also includes Simcoe County, and I'll touch a bit on that as well. Next slide, please. Some of the things that we think about when we go into discussions with other municipalities is that how do we create these intermunicipal linkages without being offside with statutory obligations required by municipalities? We all have slightly different bylaws, and legislation is changing quite rapidly here in the last environment since COVID. And so we have to be mindful of these changes as we work together. What may work in one municipality may not work in another. For example, we can't allocate water right now. We do not have enough water allocation for even infill. So we have an infrastructure problem and a cost problem. Our infrastructure opportunities for example, to join with Collingwood, we'd like to join to the pipeline, but the cost is roughly $137 million for us to connect and create a reservoir. On a well project, it's still very expensive, about 78 million now we're forecasting. And we need to build that infrastructure to not only create more volume of housing that can lower demand, but to deal with some infill opportunities where people want to put a second unit on their properties and whatnot. So again, the intermunicipal agreements from properly developed create solid accountability while delivering on the objectives of the participating municipality. So it takes everybody's issues into consideration when you join together. And ultimately, the sourcing of water is a technical and cost challenge. And this is something that's, I think, the biggest issue with respect to housing for a lot of communities is basically the infrastructure. It's not in place. Next slide, please. Might be hard to see these slides. I'm trying to see it. I can't read it myself. Maybe I can zoom in a bit here. That's it. Yep. Okay, thank you. We have seen intermunicipal sharing on transit, mutual aid, landfills, and in some instances, infrastructure. We've had joint consultation with MTO and roads, and all of us are expressing what we believe are the growth numbers that right now, from a planning perspective, are about 30% lower than what's actually going to occur. And landfills are under the jurisdiction of Simcoe County, but they're going to be, their life cycle is coming to an end soon, and it's going to have an impact on a variety of service levels. Infrastructure sharing, Clearview sends a large portion of municipal sanitary waste to the town of Wasaga Beach. Had a great relationship with them, and we have a second agreement to deal with that. But ultimately, we're dependent upon Wasaga Beach for our sewage distribution and disposal. Future considerations that are fast approaching. In the future, our landfill life cycles will come to an end. This will mean we'll either have to create transfer stations that will truck waste away from our communities, or if that happens to shut down, there's potentially a risk that we won't be able to transport our waste through to the states of where a lot of it's going now, that we may have to site other landfills. And this will be a political contentious issue, I'm sure, as all communities have experienced this in the past, but it will be something that will be coming up in the future. Partnering formally, again, I touched on this, the intermunicipal agreements can work, but geographical sizes of municipalities impact their services, especially in transit and infrastructure. So our transit system that's linked with Wasaga Beach and Collingwood and Simcoe really just comes through Stayner and around. It's quite a distance to get to Creemore, and we'd like to test those issues, but our geographical distance is a bit of an obstacle cost-wise for a lot of these to have a full connective service. Affordable housing development could be possible benefit from a four-party intermunicipal agreement. So if we all get together to try to lower a cost either for workforce housing or affordable housing, I think that the controls could be in place through an intermunicipal agreement process. Next slide, please. In this slide here, I just wanted to talk about what is defined as an affordable house. And again, I think the being able to control this cost and who gets the house, I think is something that could be established between the 4 or 5 municipalities. Workforce housing, affordable housing, and attainable housing, and subsidized housing all have various methods to achieve basically the desired outcome. But I think as we get more pressure to deal with people that basically have been priced out of the housing market, we're going to have to try to do something. And I think the matter is critical right now within many of our communities. Next slide, please. However, in the short term, a cost-controlled approach to building houses could meet the needs of those who have been priced out of the housing market the last couple of years. And I think everybody's trying to do something here right now, but we're not sure if it's enough to get the price where it needs to be so somebody can move into that home. So I think the cost-controlled approach counters a free market approach where a willing seller deals with a willing buyer. But in a cost-controlled approach, it's really not free market anymore. And making sure that everybody's working towards keeping those costs down, that we can pass it on to the future homeowner or renter or whatever the case may be for that occupying a new home. The question we must ask ourselves, could a detailed intermunicipal agreement be implemented, outlining contributions from each municipality that controls the lower cost of a home for a qualified home buyer? And obviously any other partners that we could get in that could provide either funding and or cost controls as we move forward. And that's basically where I think we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Really interesting themes in your presentation. The impact of growth, Andrew also mentioned it, and I'm sure others will. I'll just put this question out on the table because I've asked it of a few tables, and that is, the idea that growth equals prosperity. I would love to have some research done on that and really try to deeply understand if there's any relationship between the growth that's happening and our increasing lack of infrastructure. And if that is the case, what should we be doing about that? But that's another topic. But your points really about water and how critical it is for everything in our communities, obviously, particularly for our housing. Certainly waste and the relationship with waste and landfill, it just screams for more innovation being needed, rather than just filling up our beautiful land spaces. And affordable housing, and this idea that it's how do we get the costs down to where it actually is affordable? What do we mean by that? You talked about the national definition of 30% of gross household income being affordable. And so I invite everyone on this call to also register for our June 5th event, which is looking at exactly at that, John. How do we get the costs lower by utilizing innovation, municipal concessions, new financing tools like community bonds and other social finance mechanisms. We have been partnering with the University of Toronto and Rental Rescue. Some graduate students have done that work for us. So please, everybody, register for next June 5th event. Thank you very much, John, for all of those comments. Our next speaker is Sonia Skinner, CAO of Collingwood. Over to you, Sonia.
Thank you very much. Well, I took a little bit of a different tactic. So basically, it's a little bit of municipal literacy and in part how people like the people on the call today can, help municipalities to move forward in collaborating and developing a better set of communities for us all. So you can go right to slide 2, please. Really, these are some words that we use in Collingwood, and it's really about why at the annual budget, it's not necessarily the right time to collaborate and the right time for everyone to speak up. What we have at the top is a strategic plan, and the strategic plan is really going to drive many of the things that we think are important. So if you want social change and you want affordable housing, that strategic plan place is the time to participate. And just as a plug, Collingwood's just in the throes of developing our vision and strategic plan update right now. Council's doing some work on that. Please make your voice known, Institute of Southern Georgian Bay and all the people on the line. But then we find out the strategic plan's never enough. No one wants to read a 40-page strategic plan. So the master plans really start to take that vision and refine it for a certain area. So if we have a cycling master plan, for example, it talks about how we want cycling to work in Collingwood. And, what are the things we need to do in order? And we've got a pile of those in progress. We also then, of course, have the annual budget, which is a really important time to speak up, not the only time, which is that gas pedal that drives certain work forward. You can have things waiting in the queue, but if council doesn't step on the pedal and push that work, then it doesn't happen. And then the last thing I was going to mention is we have an operational plan. It goes on for multiple years, everything we've scheduled out. And it includes every council resolution that's not already done, the key studies that have to happen and when, and there is a public report every quarter that talks about those things with a 4-year rolling graphical view that can be really interesting. I'm going to mention that again in a minute. Next slide, please. One of the things we were asked to talk about is changes in our municipalities. And I chose this graphic because it's a graphic that shows the cross-section council has selected for 6th Street in Collingwood, which is a very busy street. We had always had active transportation here. There's bike lanes right now on the road. But after, a very engaged community, we ended up going with separated one-way bike lanes that really emphasize where our community is going. That's one of our big changes. We also have agreements to collaborate on our water treatment plant, and John Ferguson, CAO of Clearview, we hope you'll come on board. Same with Town of Blue Mountains. That plant will provide 60,000 homes with water at its fullest capacity. That's a lot of water available. Official plan update that's now with Simcoe County. We're putting in a lot of things related to gentle density and things that will make our communities, I think, look more like complete communities moving forward. We have a great plan for decreasing the number of unhoused and affordable housing. We're also waiting for some decisions from Simcoe County, Andrew McNeil from Wasaga, where we hope that they will build rebuild on our Birch Street property. And I do have a personal opinion here around affordable housing. And one is that it's an income-based issue or potentially a policy-based issue. And as municipalities, we're trying to solve it with land taxes. And that is an inherent challenge for us all. If you think about what you pay in income tax or have paid in your lifetime and what you pay in land tax, and then think about your water and your roads and all of those things that typically come from your land tax, and try and stretch that to, provide the provision of housing, you see where we're in a bit of a policy conundrum and why we need to work together. We have a multi-use recreation study underway. We're doing it collaboratively with the Town of Blue Mountains, and I think that's a really good example of how we may or may not build one single facility may or may not be in one of our municipalities, but we're starting at least with the same basis of the data we're jumping from, the same set of consultations, so we don't end up with sort of dueling information from which our councils can jump. And that I think is a really good example of working together and doubling our budget to get a great consultant and a thorough review. And the Arts Center feasibility study is coming back to council. It's looking at an arts center in downtown Collingwood. And I do note that Wasaga is starting to bring forward, big ideas and visions for, arts and entertainment. And for some time now, Meaford's had, a really good arts performance lineup. So hopefully we'll continue to work together on those. The last one I was going to mention is on the next slide. And it's our Terminals Point project. It's pretty amazing. I chose a picture here that really just shows the changes that's related to a hotel, an interesting space above the hotel for a restaurant, and some condos on the right side. But it is really about using an innovative partnership with a private developer to enhance the public space. So access to swimming in the water, the marina, the yacht club, the parks, and taking some big rehabilitation costs away from land taxes so we can deal with other things like affordable housing and still honor our heritage. I'm a Newfoundlander, there's a lot of H's in honor our heritage, and jump forward. Second last slide here is about some of the opportunities and challenges. Opportunities, we have a rolling 4-year plan of all of our big studies, our official plans, the servicing studies. And I really do think that collectively among our councils, places like the Mayors and CAOs Forum, it would be great to share those. Then we do more of that, like we've been able to do with Town of Blue Mountains on our recreation study, is to say, oh, you're looking at that and I'm looking at this. How can we move forward together? And I think another opportunity is to deliver service as well. I think maybe everyone's sort of mentioned this so far, and we don't have to have government changes. We don't need to amalgamate or dissolve ourselves to deliver services well over our land mass. Challenges, budget timing and alignment. By the time I figure out that maybe I need to work on with one of the other municipalities on a transit coordinator or something like that, we're halfway through the budget and it's almost too late to get our councils on board. Another challenge is shared services aversion. We do a lot of providing right now. We're not the only provider, but we do have the business development center, the pool, you know, maybe the most of the transit leadership, not all of it. Other people do have other things, and I really appreciate those. But I feel like there's real decisions to share resources that'll make it better for everyone. And the user fees and capital contributions need to be a part of that. And a detailed vision for Southern Georgian Bay. And I think Andrew touched on this a little bit when he talked about that robust destination and a regional destination. Like, what do we want to be when we grow up in an intellectual and community-based way? And really, we do need resourcing to think big. You know, we're doing this right now a little bit off the side of our desk, but when you truly put the pen to the paper and you're asking councils and people in the community to invest funds, you need to have thought it through. And those are not necessarily perfectly aligned with budgets that don't include inflation increases. My last slide is what I'm most proud of, and this is pretty, one of the things I'm really proud of is that Collingwood put together for its municipal leadership what programs we're delivering and what services. And seems easy. Yeah, there's a lot of words about what are the things you do. You should be able to just write that down, but it's really difficult. Councils have made decisions over 100 years about what they're doing and how they're, you know, tweaking it a little. What are our services? How much do we spend on each one? How many people did we hire for each? What are our taxes delivering? And to some extent, what are we not delivering that are delivered by other areas of government or need to be delivered? So if we want to compare ourselves to others or collaborate, even an understanding of what we're doing sounds easy, but it's not. I'm also proud of Terminals Point and our $270 million water treatment plant award. I really do believe finally is in a vision with a set of programs with community, if not regional understandings. So when we do our strat plan, we're looking at our municipal work, but what about electricity? What about long-term care? And I think at the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, you're thinking a bit broader than we are as local municipalities about, you know, what is needed in our regional area. And I laud you for that. With many thanks to my assistant for helping me prepare, Shelby Burkent, and my CAOs and councils for taking on this work. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sonia. I really appreciate the fact that you gave us Municipal Literacy 101. You know, a lot of us really need to be reminded of how the system works so that we can then have respect for the system or have input into how to change the system. You also focused a lot on budgeting and taxes. And I just want to say that, you know, there's been a culture of don't raise our taxes for 4 decades. It's been honed almost to perfection. And I think we need to rethink that culture to more deeply understand what are the resources required to actually address some of the increasing pressures that we're seeing, you know, water being one of the most obvious, but many of the other increasing pressures that not traditionally possibly have been municipal responsibilities. So probably we need to keep that on the table. The congratulations on the water plant and the fact that it could you know, service 60,000 homes. You know, in this whole region that we look at with 6 municipalities, 7 municipalities, we're you know, and guests and visitors, we're about at 100,000. So this this project is going to be really, really significant. Affordable housing, income-based, thank you for bringing that up. We have to understand that in our region, it is a service-based economy in large part. People are making between 15 and $25 an hour. That means that they've got about $1,000 a month for rent. And there's no rental units in our region for $1,000 a month. So we need to really double down on that particular issue. The collaboration on the multi-use recreational study, fantastic. You've talked about alignment, using the data, and doubling the budget. That's the value of collaborative efforts. So thank you very much for your presentation. Sean Everett, CAO of the Blue Mountains, is up next. Sean, over to you.
Thank you very much. And just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to have this presentation today. I want to thank the South Georgian Bay Institute for the invitation, and in particular, Rosalind for reaching out to our CAOs. Next slide, please. So the approach that I'm basically going to take today is just, making sure that when we look at the regional approach, as CAO, I believe it's something that we should be doing with everything that we move forward with. But before doing that, I think each municipality truly has to understand and confirm the services that each level, each tier of the government provides. It's also important that the municipality is set up to provide the service at the level that it's expected, to make sure that we have the resources to be able to provide that level of service. I'm a big believer that the service provision categories should be what must the municipality provide, and what are those mandatory legislative requirements. What should the municipality provide? What's the best practice? And what municipality could. And I always put these in the nice to do's. And the nice to do's is, quite frankly, where we struggle the most, because these nice to do's, often we take them on, but we don't do very good work in providing them. The best practice, for instance, sidewalk snow removal, right? We don't have to do it, but it could be a best practice. I think the key thing is when we look at the nice to do's, is it actually a function of an upper tier? And the one that I always come up with is, physician recruitment. We need to have physicians. We are in a critical position to add physicians to our region, but actually that's the provincial mandate. Like, that's their responsibility. So if we're going to get into it, let's make sure that we actually do a good job of it. Next slide. So again, when we take a look at, okay, these are the services that the municipality should do or must do or are nice to do, I think it's important that for municipalities to understand, I think it's really important that when considering the municipal services, one needs to consider whether these services can be more effectively and efficiently provided through regional collaboration. I honestly believe day-to-day operations should be considered as opportunities for regional collaboration, like getting down to the minutia. Whether it is a short-term accommodation program that multiple municipalities can share the operation, building departments, all of these areas, I think, should be always considered as regional collaboration opportunities. The municipal councils, this is key. Municipal councils and management have to be willing to proactively consider regional service agreements. We can talk the talk all we want, but we have to be willing to do the work to actually look at engaging with one another and making these things, use some pilot projects. Not everything is going to work, but, to Sonia's point that she made, oftentimes we have these discussions at the last minute because of budget discussions. Like, these are projects that, quite frankly, I think to be successful, they're probably 2-3 years in the making. Just to be able to get things and have the vulnerability from each municipality to be able to try things. So the other piece, and other CAOs have mentioned this, and I'm a firm believer of this, not every service collaboration needs to be the result of amalgamation, or more importantly, the fear of amalgamation. I've seen way too many service agreements and collaboration ideas come at the last minute because there's the fear of amalgamation. We don't need that fear to be able to be innovative to at least consider where these regional collaborations are. Next slide, please. So what we're talking about, and I'm glad nobody used this map. When we talk about the South Georgian Bay region, this is the map that we use. And we use this map religiously when we go to the ministry at conferences to talk about really the promotion of South Georgian Bay. When we go to conferences and go to the ministries, we really try to push this envelope that we are looking beyond our borders. You know, we're talking about the different municipalities, and more importantly, we're actually talking about, these are two counties, like Simcoe County and Grey County. So this is, I think, a really important piece to always remember when we're talking about this. You know, it is the South Georgian Bay, and we need to, in my opinion, need to flog this as much as we possibly can, because we are getting traction at the province to consider this, you know, a region with a small r. As far as some of the projects that we are looking for, next slide, please. We believe that, you know, we are making some traction here in Town of Blue Mountains. We're trying to be innovative as much as we possibly can, where when we talk about a regional housing strategy, Town of Blue Mountains did make a formal request to Grey County to take on the lead as the regional housing needs strategy champion. Again, strongly believe that the county can play an integral role and a critical role in doing the legwork to come up with the policies that 9 municipalities in Grey County could actually benefit from. So we're all talking the same language, because oftentimes what I've seen is, you know, developers will often potentially not play, but compare one municipality to the other, saying, well, you don't have to do this here, and why you have to do it in your municipality. So I think getting that consistency would be really important. I think the opportunity for Grey County, and when I say Grey County, South Georgian Bay, I think Simcoe could benefit as well, to actually have a public land ownership inventory. So when we start looking at opportunities for attainable housing or affordable housing builds, we actually can start looking at public land that can actually become more readily available. And the model that we're suggesting, and we pose to Grey County, it's very similar. It's the same model that Grey County and Bruce County used for the community safety well-being plan, where in fact 18 municipalities in the two counties joined together to actually do that community safety and well-being plan, and it went very, very well. And I think effectiveness, but more so efficiency, like the cost of that program, rather than 18 municipalities and 2 counties trying to do it on themselves, you know, there was one budget for it. So the return on investment was absolutely massive. Next slide, please. The regional servicing strategy. This is something, again, that we've went to the Ministry of Infrastructure, as well as Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. From a Town of Blue Mountains perspective, when we talk about water, wastewater, stormwater, drainage, anything infrastructure, one of the pitches that we made was, you know, for the province to consider any funding request from a municipality, that municipality should show that they've done their due diligence to see whether or not there was a regional opportunity collaboration to be considered. May not have worked out, but there should be a box that says, did you actually go to your neighbors? Did you go to your regional partners to see whether or not there could be a regional approach before the application for funding could be considered? I think the proactive collaboration, it's critical. I think we build way too much infrastructure individually when joint infrastructure projects could actually create huge efficiencies. Even I think the reduction in the number of environmental assessments, EAs, the amount of money and time that we spend doing our own infrastructure plans is mind-boggling to me when from a regional approach, but it has to be long-term, could really bring a lot of benefit to our community. And then really the last piece is the regional transportation strategy. Sorry, next slide. I believe our South Georgian Bay partners, we have done something that no other area was able to do, and quite frankly, I don't think ever came up with the idea to do, where as South Georgian Bay region, we actually had Simcoe and Grey join us and had Central Region and West Region for 2 years, and they're more than happy to come back. We actually had directors and staff from MTO on a bus with us and actually doing tours of each of the municipalities, showing potential detours, and quite frankly, getting feet on the ground, getting them away from the tables, and show them what the actual, issues are, what the challenges are. And that was a regional approach. And quite frankly, to have, Simcoe County was Grey County, Simcoe, or Clearview, Blue Mountains, Meaford, Collingwood, Wasaga Beach, all in the same bus with roughly 8 other MTO staff from 2 different regions. And even MTO self-proclaimed the Simcoe or Central and West had never been on a bus together or a meeting like that together. So looking at those opportunities to build on that regional approach, I think are absolutely essential. And just in closing, and I think I've actually been on this panel before and used that term vulnerability. That's where we're at. We're getting far more vulnerable with one another as partners. To Sonia's point, it can't just be when we are looking for additional money to make a project happen. It has to be well thought out. It has to be a consistent approach. And the other thing I think it's okay is if one of our partnering municipalities doesn't fit or doesn't want to move forward, that's okay, right? The others don't get held back from that. But the door is always open. So, Andrew's slides about the regional destination and, how the Village of Blue, the crazy thing is 15 years ago, we were talking about this, and something as simple as a regional approach with our museums and putting something together regionally that tied Meaford, Blue Mountains, Clearview, Wasaga Beach, and Grey Highlands all into a museum tour. Right? So regionally, does it make sense for somebody to come up and drive 3 hours to go to the Craigleith Depot? Maybe not. But does it make sense for them to come up on a regional tour and see 5 or 6 museums? Absolutely. And these are all things that we've talked about, but we've never had the vulnerability to actually move forward. Usually we talk about it during budget when we're trying to get more revenue, and then the budget gets approved, and then we carry on. But that's the approach that I've taken with this presentation, because I think it's really, we've talked enough about it. Now the pressure should be, quite frankly, from our residents to start pushing the envelope of regional collaboration, because that, I think, is where we can move this thing forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sean. Wow, lots to think about. I really loved your example of the regional transportation strategy. And one thing that you focused in on was bringing people together who had never been brought together before. I think a couple of years ago with the CAOs event, we introduced most of you to each other. So that's step one, and that is action. It's developing the kind of relationships with the vulnerability you mentioned to begin to trust each other and do things we've never done before, because there will be some risk and there will be some experimentation that might not work out, but we do need to take those steps. So thank you for emphasizing that. When we look at our region, Wasaga Beach, Clearview, Collingwood, Grey Highlands, Town of the Blue Mountain, Meaford, and Owen Sound, I mean, that's a powerful group of brains and a powerful group of resources. So think about how we could do that. And when we get to the chat, which we'll get to momentarily, we can start popping in some ideas. I think that one of the questions that we'll talk about is what would help councils and management be more willing to proactively consider regional collaboration. So let's come back to that question in a few minutes. So thank you, Sean, for all of those ideas. And our next speaker is Karen Govan, who is the CAO of the Grey Highlands. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Roz, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I was getting a message there. So I don't have anything groundbreaking after the former presenters. There's nothing going to be earth-shattering or different in my presentation. I think it's clear we're all struggling with the same challenges. So next slide, please. So when you talk about challenges, I think, what keeps me awake at night, and each night it's something different, especially in this job, because it's never consistent. But the housing pressures, and we're feeling housing pressures from all sizes of houses. So it's not just affordable houses. It's not just houses for purchase. It's rental units. I mean, in our major settlement areas in Grey Highlands, in Flesherton and Markdale, there is zero inventory of houses, and that is a huge challenge for us, because in Grey Highlands we have two major industries. We have Chapman's and we have Ice River Sustainable Solutions. And with no housing, then that brings a local workforce retention issue, because both of these industries have shipped in workers from other locations. They've tried to have buses bring people from places like Southgate and Shelburne and even further afield. So the need to provide good housing for changing workforce too is a challenge for us. We don't have local transportation, local public transportation in Grey Highlands. We don't even have Uber. I know maybe some of our municipalities to the north might have received Uber as an option, but I think the closest taxi for Grey Highlands is out of Owen Sound, which becomes very expensive. So, looking at options for transportation has become one of the priorities for the municipality. Managing tourism. I think John said, a lot of people that are visiting Wasaga, Collingwood, town of Blue Mountains, they're driving through our municipalities. And we need to find options to get people to stop for the economic development side of things, and building a vibrant downtown and with attractive shops and restaurants is one of the priorities we have. But the challenge of the managing tourism is, there's lots of beautiful places of nature within our region. And after the pandemic, when people discovered Grey Highlands, the challenge became, well, where's everybody going to park, and where's the garbage going to go, and washroom facilities. So that became a major expense for Grey Highlands, and a big challenge to try and manage that tourism aspect. We talked for many years about climate mitigation. I think now we've moved, it's a shift, it's more climate adaptation, and we're talking about how we're going to respond to floods and tornadoes and potential wildfires. So that, not what if, it's when that happens, how do we get support, and how do we respond to that? Infrastructure. I mean, I could talk for days on infrastructure renewal. I'm a former finance person, and it just boggles my mind how lower tier municipalities are tasked with replacing all of this once owned by the provincial government, a lot of it. Now municipalities at the lower tier have to find solutions, to water, wastewater, roads. And speaking of roads in Grey Highlands, I mean, our geography, we're 850 square kilometers. And 850 square kilometers is a challenge when funding is generally based on population, and we have 10,000 people. So the funding doesn't help support 650 kilometers of roads and 3 water systems and 4 arenas and 3 landfills. Like the funding mechanism and the funding, calculations don't align properly with rural municipalities. So that, is a bit of an issue for us as well. So, we talked about the challenges. I mean, the changing world. I mean, the pandemic did change everything dramatically. I mean, we now have part-time residents, and I know my colleagues on the call have the same thing. We had part-time residents who have now sold their properties in the GTA and moved permanently to their part-time properties. And there's a higher demand now for instant services such as the internet, and with, like I said, 850 square kilometers. That is a challenge for us to get internet to every corner of the municipality. The communication side of things, I mean, we have instant communication now with social media and initiatives online. And the expectation, I think, from the general public is the municipality can respond instantly as well. So communications is starting to become a 24/7 service that, we never used to have to provide. I talked about tourism and the movement of people, but we are seeing so many people coming through our municipality, and through Grey Highlands. The major provincial highway is Highway 10, and on a Friday in the summer, it is backed up. We've never seen anything like it. And I think, the pandemic did change that, where people got out and saw what was in Ontario and what was on their doorstep rather than flying off to another country. And I don't think that is going to change for us. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the next slide, sorry. We see issues with the tender process and supply chain. I mean, it is getting a little bit better, but I know, just even to replace pickup trucks, we were waiting almost 2 years to get new trucks. And part of the issue for us is the process that we have to go through. So looking for better processes is, they say the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So we have to look at beyond our conventional processes to find out ways to do things better. Next slide, please. So, we need to accept the fact that growth is coming. There seems to be, could you just click the slide again one more time? Okay, there we go. Thank you. So we need to accept that, growth is changing, people are changing, and the day-to-day processes are changing with downloading from the province. So we need to accept that. But we need to figure out ways to deal with the impacts of that. With a changing time, a changing municipality, we're getting more operational impacts, and with development, there's more roads, there's more snow plowing, there's more maintenance. You need larger wastewater systems. All of that comes at a price, and I think it was Sonia who said it. We keep trying to fund all this through limited provincial and federal funding and tax, and we have no jurisdiction over what the other levels of government give to us, or how they determine what they're going to give to us. The only determination we have is what that tax rate is going to look like. And we've seen it in the past 2-3 years, where a lot of municipalities are coming in now with double-digit increases on the budget. And it's not sustainable. at the end of the day, you know, it's just passing on the pressure to the homeowner, and they're already struggling. But we know the growth has to happen because of the housing shortage, and because of the migration out of the GTA. And we can't stop it, but we have to make sure that it's balanced. It has to be balanced. And I think municipalities have to look at, you know, good development policy and attracting industry and commercial along with residential and all types of residential, rental units, condo units, you know, large kind of 1 acre lots. I mean, there's a balance there, and I think it's important, but we also have to make sure that there's jobs and an array of jobs, good paying jobs, as well as entry level workforce type jobs too. So, you know, when we look at the governance side of things, I mean, I spoke to the process. I mean, we keep trying to update our processes, and it's funny when you talk about zoning bylaws and official plans and the process to change those, it's so long. And it's almost like by the time you finish, you need to start again because it's outdated. And that's an issue with how municipal governments have their hands tied and the red tape that they need to get through in order to get things done. You know, I talk about low voter turnout. I mean, one of the things that I've talked to with some of my colleagues on the call today, part of the issue with that is we don't know what our communities want because the voter turnout is so low. So the minority has voted in council, and council sitting there thinking they know what the community wants because that's how they got in that seat. But at the end of the day, there's another 70% of our communities out there who haven't had a voice yet and haven't spoken. So I find a lot of times we're going back with community engagement in order to even make a decision. When years ago, perhaps council would have just made the decision based on, you know, I think I know why I was voted in, and I want to make that decision on behalf of my constituents. So, you know, communication, I talk about it, communication comes up in every aspect of every business. But going back to that instant communication where the expectation is that people can get an answer today, we're not keeping up with that in local government, and partly due to old legislation. I was at a conference and a couple of years ago, and they showed a video of building a house through a 3D printer, and it was a time-lapse video, and this house was built in 24 hours. And the facilitator of the presentation turned around and he said, "How long does it take to get a building permit?" And that just made sense to me. If you can build a house in 24 hours now, why does it still take the time it takes to get a building permit? So it's almost like legislation is not keeping up with technology and what we're facing with growth and changes. Next slide, please. So for
one more minute, Karen.
Thank you. For collaboration, I mean, getting together and delegating at the provincial level and walking in to the Ministry of Transport as we did. I think what we're doing here is we're trying to highlight to the provincial government, there's another golden horseshoe here. There is a region that is being overlooked and under supported by the federal and the provincial government. And I think having our voices together, it makes us louder, and it enables us to get the attention from the people who can eventually help us get through what we need to get through and provide the mandates that they're telling us we need to. Thank you. I'll leave it there.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. Again, you brought up some really interesting themes that some of the others did and some that they didn't. So, this whole notion of, managing tourism, that's a big piece of our economy in this region. So we're going to have to figure that one out. I think possibly you were the only CAO who brought up climate adaptation specifically. That is another huge area that we need to unpack regionally. Infrastructure renewal. I'm so glad to hear you bring that up and reference balanced growth at the same time, because we need to figure out if there is that relationship between growth and the increase in our infrastructure deficit, and of course the lack of funding to make it happen. So it would be great to have a conversation with you later on about that kind of research. But really what you came down to was this advocating together, this pooling of our voices and our resources, so that we can shine a light on this whole region. I called it the second golden horseshoe. This region is unique in so many ways. And it's time that we had some specific highlight on what do we do with these more rural municipalities that play such an incredibly important role in this province. So thank you, Karen, for that. You also talked a little bit about strategy. Strategy and learning are not things that we put a heck of a lot of emphasis on. And I think that we need to do more of. So the first question that I'm going to throw out to all of the CAOs for their consideration is, could you tell us what's currently going on at the mayors and CAOs meetings? And do you have ideas as to how those meetings, should there be more of them more regularly, really focused on this idea of strategic foresight and really grappling with this regional issue? So can anybody take that one on? John. And you're muted.
So the mayors and CEOs get together, but there's really no authority. So we discuss a lot of, I think, issues that we're all facing to see where we can work together. One of the key ones that came out of it was what Sean described as the MTO visit, that really open their eyes to what is happening in this area from a traffic perspective and what it potentially can do to our communities. And I think it was really understood from that process. But ultimately, whatever we do, we have to go back to our councils. And so when we go back to our councils, it then becomes another discussion. Sometimes we try to craft what would be the right question that we're going to ask our councils to consider. And I think we've only done it once or twice. But ultimately, I would say that the relationship is strong. People want to work together. The only thing that really comes into play is they want to make sure they stay on side legislatively. But more importantly, I think there's a desire. We talk about climate, we talk about housing, we talk about roads, and on all those challenges. We talk about social issues as well. So I would say that it's a great group to bring together to see what obstacles each of us face and to see where we can move. So we've made arrangements on transit, and we'll continue to work on issues of mutual aid and other areas. But most of the new stuff, we have to go back to our respective councils.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned once already, thank you, John, for your comments. I mentioned once already that the Institute was the first group to bring together the CAOs and introduce you to each other. And then we were the first group to, or some of you knew each other before that, but most of you did not. Yes. And so I think that the Institute was also the first organization to bring the mayors together in public and be on the same platform. So what I'm hearing you say is that there needs to be more opportunities to bring all the councils together, because really the first step is getting to know each other and to building that trust, and then to creating that collective agenda. And then to Sonia's point, doing it well in advance so that, you know, there's time to get agreement on things before the next budget cycle. So, you know, you might want to imagine a monthly meeting. You might want to imagine, you know, the foresight required to create that collective agenda to accelerate the thing, because I can hear all of you saying loud and clear that, you know, the relationships are good and that you do want to work together. Sean.
Yeah, and just, you know, just to add to John's point, you know, at the last meeting that we had there definitely was, you know, a discussion about taking it even beyond the mayors and the CAOs, and you know, having staff be able to network more with one another.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I do want to say that probably what I've seen and understand, like the staff amongst the municipalities, they actually already collaborate a lot. So like that is actually already happening. I think it just could benefit from being more of a formalized approach. One of the discussions that we had was, you know, as municipalities go forward with building projects, you know, Town of Blue Mountains, through the work that we're doing, every building that we build has to be considered a net zero. We're actually looking at net positive builds. Well, the work that we're doing, we want to make sure that our staff are actively sharing that information with our partners and our neighbors, because our neighbors shouldn't have to go through the same process we have to learn. And so it's getting you know, getting our staff to do this regional collaboration as well, which I can tell those members on the who are listening, it's actually, it amazes me how much that's already happening at the grassroots. So it's almost like mayors and CAOs are catching up to the work that's already being done. But I've never seen it as positive that as to where it is right now. So thanks for that.
That's wonderful, and maybe just to make it more intentional to be able to put that into people's day timers. Thank you all for such important presentations to bring all of the people on this call up to speed on where you are all at. We'd like to engage all the participants in a bigger discussion. And Jess, I'm going to ask you, what are you seeing in the chat? And are there some questions coming
We've
forward?
got quite a few questions coming in. So the first was early on during CAO Ferguson's presentation from Pamela. Thank you, Pamela. Would like a definition of what cost controls means.
That related to housing.
Right. No, it's a great question. So everybody's probably heard that we all need to work together, provincial, federal, and municipal governments, and even any other agencies as it relates to housing. So if depending on the municipality, you may do your development through DC charges, development charges. And development charges, in order to build a neighborhood, for example, could be $100,000 for just one property. If those development charges were waived through an agreement of other municipalities that would participate in carrying some of those costs, then that cost control could be taken off the price of a house. Okay. The other thing is that when you're dealing with other levels of government, we've heard where the federal government said that they'll make federal land available in certain areas. And I think our provincial government has talked about it as well. And you heard Andrew at the start of this presentation talk about provincial land in Wasaga Beach. Wouldn't it be great if we got that at no cost? And that cost could be handed on, that controlled cost could be handed on to the future homeowner. But it's very important that a very strong structured place, intermunicipal agreement be created in order to make sure that the legislation's followed, but those cost controls are in place and they're passed on to the potential qualified new homeowner or renter or whatever the case may be. So when I talk about controlled costs, there's many. I've just mentioned a few, but those are some of the things that if we work together, we may be able to pass that on so that we could provide workforce opportunities for people to live closer to where they need to work and provide services.
Great. Thanks so much, John. That's great. What else, Jess?
Pamela had another question, but just for the sake of time, we want to spread it out a little bit. But she did champion the idea of the museum tour. So we can get the CAO some of these questions and comments as well after the event for further consideration in your meetings. The next question then came from Joyce Hall. Is Simcoe County working on green development standards? Gray, Dufferin, and Wellington are collaborating on green development standards. If not, perhaps this regional collaboration could be expanded to include Simcoe. Does anyone want to comment on that?
So we just finished our official plan, and it is now headed to the county of Simcoe for approving. We have put in green development standards within our OP, and we worked very closely with Simcoe County on developing our OP. So we're hoping that it will get approved at the county level fairly soon, because there was a lot of interaction in that area. They also are familiar with our existing strategic plan, which we just finished this past spring. And we've developed basically 5 priorities, climate being one of the top priorities. And we've established a climate action committee. And we're also establishing what each department is doing with respect to climate mitigation. And any of those issues may involve dealing with the county and our other partners. And I'm glad you mentioned the county of Simcoe, because I think they are somebody that needs to be at our table as well. They have a lot to offer, and they have services that are sometimes confused as being the municipalities, the lower tier municipality services, such as solid waste collection and whatnot. But I think they need to be at the table as well. So I think there is an opportunity for that collaboration to occur.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. And that actually answered, I think, a question a little bit lower that came from Sally. Planning for climate adaptation and mitigation hasn't been mentioned yet, except for Grey Highlands. So thank you, John, for touching on that. The next is a comment from Julie. Perhaps the regional CAOs could consider a shared vision on affordable housing pilot project and a planned trip to see how other municipalities have collaborated with housing providers on their successes. For workforce housing, rental, and home ownership. Many projects are underway south of us. A planned visit might help cement best practices. Let's keep everyone on the same bus and touring together. So thank you for that, Julie. Does anyone have a comment on Julie's comment there, or suggestion?
I'll just take a crack at that one. I think it's anytime that you can get decision makers in one place, I think is really important. I think also when we talk about, getting the people on the bus, going to these locations, I think it's really important that the decision makers actually see, feel, and experience what those builds can be. They're nothing to be afraid of. The communities need to be open to, understanding that these are not eyesores. These are what we need. And being able to get the decision makers to really understand what these developments can be, because that is actually where we'll actually get the movement when we get decisions at council to move these things forward. And I think I cannot stress enough, I'm a firm believer that getting people on a bus, having the discussion, going to these locations, I think is fantastic. And Julie's heard me say this, I think 100 times before. It's just getting the right people on the bus to go commit to doing these things. So it's a great concept. Thanks.
Thanks,
Sonia,
Sean.
did you have a comment?
Yeah, I struggle a bit on the affordable housing side, and it's no struggle whatsoever with wanting to address it. And certainly the direction from our council has been, very clear, and we have an amazing affordable housing task force. At least one member's on here somewhere, 2 members actually, at least. But I really do get lost in the ability to pay for it. So when I just come back again to land taxes. So the average, person's paying maybe $4,000 a year for their land taxes. And in that $4,000, we're doing all those services I put up on that very busy slide. We're giving water and wastewater and plowing the roads and all the recreation programs and all of those kinds of things. And then when we have affordable housing, like we're very focused on this I know we're talking about local government right now, but we're focusing on this local government We do not have the levers to provide housing. When you give your $4,000, even if we gave that $4,000 directly to your neighbor, it doesn't give them enough money to go from a $998,000 purchase to the $355,000 purchase you would have to do to be affordable for a purchased home in Collingwood. And I really do think that we have to start thinking a little bit differently. So what is the value of acting together? It's not financial. We will never, ever be able to pay for other people's houses. You know, how much money do you want to donate so that you pay for someone else's house? It's never happening. So the problem becomes the province doesn't allow us to do inclusive zoning, which means that each development must include as a mandatory requirement a certain amount of affordable housing. If we were allowed to do that, then collaborating among this group to do things like all use that same provision so people don't, you know, just move to the municipality next door and then not have to build affordable housing. So I think, you know, I don't know everything at all. We have a great team working here, but I just feel like I need to say to us, it's not money. We can't do this with local municipal money. It is impossible. And even if you have a piece of land that's worth $5 or $10 million, I could sell that piece of land in Collingwood and buy one in somewhere else for half the price, and then take those profits and put them into affordable housing. Like municipal land is not free. It's an asset that all of you own that we need to invest for the best benefit of our collective communities. Anyway, food for thought to be provocative.
Thanks, Sonia. And before we get to Karen with her hand up, I'll just say a few things. Everyone is going to have to pay something to solve this issue. And don't forget what we're talking about here. So many people have mentioned it. If we don't find a way to create rental units that our labor force can afford, our towns will not be sustainable. It's that simple. So you're right, Sonia, we are going to have to be very innovative, but all of us are going to have to pay. And tune in next week, June 5th, so that we can begin to understand what are some of those innovations that we actually need to insert into these discussions. Learning has to be part of our everyday experience, and on this issue, it's straight up. Karen, over to you.
Thanks, Roz. I actually have to agree with Sonia. I mean, this has been a problem that's been handed down to us, and it's almost like the buck stops here. And you know, it's not even like everybody's being handed money from the provincial governments. I mean, we see some of the larger municipalities to the south of us that have been successful in getting some of the provincial funding for affordable housing. In order to even get to that point, the cost is catastrophic to the taxpayer. Having to have housing strategies and you know, master plans in place in order to just even qualify to put in an application for funding it's not helpful. And I think, you know, we accepted in the 90s that roads and water and wastewater infrastructure was handed down to the municipality, and now we have to fix it. Now the time has come. So all of these things are hitting this bottleneck, and municipalities are so you know, choked with all of what they have to get done, 10%, 12% budgets, trying to just get the initiatives off the table that we already have. And I think one of my other colleagues brought up healthcare as well. You know, why do municipalities have to do doctor recruitment? Well, it's because members of the community are speaking to our councils and saying, I don't have a rostered doctor. So that becomes a municipal problem as well. So I think the power in this group is the ability to lobby and go to the delegations and talk to them. And I think, you know, if Grey Highlands was to delegate in front of the Minister of Health and say, it's not our problem that there's no doctors in Grey Highlands, it doesn't have much of an impact. But when 5 municipalities show up with the mayors and CAOs, you start to get some attention. And I think that's one of the things that our mandate is in this group, is to get the attention of the provincial ministries so that we get the support we need, meaningful support.
Wonderful comments, Karen. And so that sounds like it should be the whole agenda for the next mayors and CAOs meeting, because it's not just the taxpayer, although the taxpayer will likely have to chip in. It is municipal taxpayer, it is the province, it is the feds, and it is the innovation in using whatever the municipality can do in terms of concessions, plus social finance tools and other investments that we'll hear more about next week, June 5th, 4:30 at our next event. Jess, are we running out of time? Do we have time for one more question?
It's 6:01, so we're past time. I did put in the chat that I have recorded everyone else's comments and questions so that we can share those with the CAOs at their next collaborative meeting as well.
Great. Well, listen, what can we say? Karen, Sonia, Sean, John, and Andrew, your jobs are immense, and we are grateful that you're in those roles. The complexity that we've discussed tonight is not just being experienced with our smaller rural municipalities, it's right across the country. So the more that we can collectively advocate and figure out those innovations together, the better off we'll be. Someone at least once, if not more, said community engagement is key, but it's not just at voting time. It's not just municipal voting and provincial voting and federal voting. Community engagement all year long makes the world go round. And the more that we as residents can become involved in these issues, learn about them together and invest in them together, the better off we'll all be. So again, to all the speakers, we are grateful for your comments today and grateful for the work that you're doing. For all of the participants on this call, thank you so much for carving out time to get on to these more complex conversations. And I hope that we'll see all of you next week, Wednesday, June 5th, 4:30 to 6 p.m., so that we begin to understand the numbers, so that we can see what's possible on an issue like affordable housing. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great evening. Let's stay connected. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.